I'm Michelle Aronson, and welcome to True Stories at Work, where we discuss the best things about working in human resources, the people, the stories, and the things that happen at work that we didn't even know about. Workplace Confessions. I'm a recovering HR executive, certified coach, and business school professor who knows that the best stories happen at work. From heartbreaking to heartwarming, from hilarious to outrageous. Now, I help companies build better workforces by aligning values and actions to business strategy. Today, you get to meet Stella, who took her first career pivot from sales to recruitment in 2009, when the housing crisis closed her company with no notice.
So when I interviewed with the head of HR at that time, I was her second hire and the company's first ever recruiter. And then that is really when my career took off. And over that 8 years, we grew from 30 stores to 400 stores, 5,000 employees. And that was really how I grew up in HR through recruiting and talent acquisition.
And she learned some valuable lessons.
And while you can apply what you've learned, I think it's dangerous if you just try to copy and paste what you've done in a past life.
Like every great HR leader, Stella is obsessed with maintaining a great culture. And she shares some of her favorite company values and how they show up on her team.
One of our core values is call BS on your boss. It's probably our most notorious core value at our company, but I give my team permission to call BS on me if I am going too fast in a certain direction, because I will move fast because of my natural tendency to be impatient. And that just comes along with my personality type.
And then we wrap up with a workplace confession about 3 people sneaking into the same closet for very different reasons. We begin this episode at the start of my interview, where we get the pleasure of meeting a very special and very quiet guest, Stella's daughter, and her biggest fan. So let's get started. And who's in the background?
I've got my daughter, Steffi, here. She's
Aww.
over there on the couch and she wanted to listen in. She's 7.
Is she a raving fan of her mom?
She is. It's interesting because it's like we grew up like playing house, playing pretend in the kitchen and things like that. But it's because of this whole shift where she's seen me work from home that she likes to play office.
She might want to be an HR person someday, right? Once she hears these great things, she'll definitely want to do it. So, Stella, thanks for being a guest on my show. I'm really excited to learn more about you and wonder if you wouldn't just introduce yourself and explain what you're doing in HR these days.
Yeah, sure. So, Stella, I'm happy to be here. I was happy to get the introduction to you through another podcast that you completed. And I have been in HR for about 15 years of my career, kind of dedicated to HR. I grew up through talent acquisition and recruiting. And then for the last 6.5 years, I've been in SaaS and technology, leading the HR function, born and raised in Houston. And I've seen the company kind of grow over the last 6.5 years, triple in size. So it's been a pretty exciting journey.
Yeah, and a lot of work, tripling in size. But you mentioned Houston, so I
Yeah.
know where you're from, but what was it like when you were a kid growing up in Houston?
Yeah, so I'm first generation born and raised in Houston. So my parents came over here for education in the 60s. And then the reason why we're in Houston is that my dad is a retired rocket scientist from NASA, which is pretty cool. And then my mom was also a librarian at NASA. So I've lived here my entire life, except for the 4 years that I went away to Texas A&M. That's where I met my husband over 20 years ago. And we came right back to Houston after graduation and built our lives and career and family here. So I have a lot of Houston pride.
Yeah, I guess. My brother moved down there and has it too. It didn't take much for him to become a full-fledged Texan, probably 6 months or less.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great place to raise a family.
So, Houston born and bred, what were you thinking of in terms of your profession, when you were a kid growing up in Houston?
I grew up in the era where you watched a lot of daytime talk shows. And so my dream was always to become like this lively and entertaining talk show host because I loved how they could command an audience. I loved the topics that they would cover and how deep they would get with their guests. And I just thought it would be such a cool experience to pretend to have a talk show. My style would be more like late night talk show, just getting to focus on a guest and have fun with them and also learn about whatever they're going through or what they're promoting at the moment.
So, how did you end up in HR?
My career didn't start in HR. When I got out of school, I was very clear I wanted to do sales. I was young, I was ambitious. I wanted to figure out how to control my own paycheck and make a lot of money in the least amount of hours possible. I was very coin operated when I got out of school. After a few years, I had an opportunity to lead my own consumer lending branch, and I realized that kind of the best parts of leadership were not just the operational work, but I loved the people aspect. And so, how I got into HR was in 2009. That was when the mortgage and housing crisis happened. And actually, there was a Yahoo News bulletin that announced that our company was closing its US headquarters. I had an employee that morning text me and say, "Have you seen the headlines? Have you seen the news? Are we getting shut down?" And when I went into the office, I was on a series of conference calls. And by noon that day, I had employees with tears in their eyes walking out of the branch for the last time. I stayed on for a couple of more months as the leader of that branch and closed down the business. I was fortunate to be able to take a break, get married that year, and really kind of think about how I wanted to pivot my career. And so I found an opportunity as a recruiter for a local fast fashion women's retail startup based in Houston that I love to shop at. I had a friend that was a fashion buyer for the brand, and I saw a posting for a recruiter, and I thought, I really want to pivot and get into recruiting where I can kind of pair my sales skills and my people skills. So when I interviewed with the head of HR at that time, I was her second hire and the company's first ever recruiter. And then that is really when my career took off. And over that 8 years, we grew from 30 stores to 400 stores, 5,000 employees. And that was really how I grew up in HR through recruiting and talent acquisition.
What a great story, too. I mean, in terms of one thing closing and the next door opening and really being able to use those skills. Recruiting is sales in a way, right?
I call it matchmaking, right? You're a career matchmaker because you have to make the hiring manager and the candidate kind of agree to fall in love, right? And take a bet on each other. But I really had to take a bet on myself because at the point that I had taken the recruiter opportunity, I took more than a 50% pay cut to start all the way back over in an entry level role. And that was the investment that I made in my career to really pivot and do something different while I still could. And I am so thankful that I got the opportunity to do that.
That seems like a pretty big change. What surprised you the most about your first few steps in HR?
Anything really surprised me because I had done recruiting and hiring as part of the leadership role, in the banking organization, right? So I was used to kind of interviewing, but I think what was important was I had to learn a completely new industry and then learn about the type of people that they wanted to hire and just ask a lot of questions in order to be curious and understand. Because I've switched industries, now 3 times, right? The first chapter of the career was consumer finance and banking. Second chapter of my career was retail. And then the third chapter of my career has been SaaS and technology. And so every time I can't be surprised by how much work it is because it's something that I prepare myself for in order to make sure that I learn.
Are there similar threads through those 3 pivots, or are they really starting over?
It really does feel like starting over in a way because you have to completely leave what you've had behind, apply some experiences, but be curious enough to learn a completely new set of people, stakeholders, core values, company, and operating styles. And while you can apply what you've learned, I think it's dangerous if you just try to copy and paste what you've done in a past life. And so, in that way, I'm good at shifting my mindset in order to adapt, but there's always still roadblocks that come along the way that are frustrating because things don't get done a certain way that you're used to in your past muscle memory.
I don't think you can copy and paste anything anywhere with human beings. Maybe you can do it on a manufacturing floor if you're setting up a whole similar line, but when it comes to humans, it feels dangerous.
Yeah.
What are a couple of moments that really changed you or forced you to change if you weren't interested at the time?
Sure. The first thing that I think about that really shaped who I am was the first time I was promoted into management. So I was 24 years old. And at that point in time, I was asked to lead one of the consumer lending branches. And it was a highly aggressive, male dominated environment. And I remember being told to watch Boiler Room. Do you remember that movie?
No, I didn't see it.
It kind of shows you a cold calling, aggressive sales environment. And I think that I did a lot of unnatural things to showcase power that didn't feel authentic to who I was. And because I was promoted amongst my peer group, my thought was that I needed to elevate and be angry and be aggressive. That was so far from my normal personality that I think people saw right through it. I was promoted young. I had imposter syndrome and I just took the wrong advice from leadership.
And that's horrible advice to watch a movie. I did see Glenn Ross. Who would ever want to work in that kind of environment anyway? That would make me not want to take the job.
That's the movie that said always be closing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So same type of environment, but it was, this was over 20 years ago and I've learned some lessons from them. And I, of course, learned that if you work alongside your team and help them be successful and you do it in a way that feels natural to you, then it's believable and you'll build trust.
And if they believe that you care about them and their own growth, then you will move mountains, right?
Yeah.
Getting them on board and using their best skills in their own authentic way is where the magic can happen. That's a great moment. What else?
The second moment I think about is after I spent my first year in HR. So I was lucky enough to get hired by the head of HR. This was when I was working in corporate retail. The company had hired me as their very first ever recruiter. So I was doing all of the hiring for the year. And at the award ceremony hosted by our CEO, I received some type of Employee of the Year award in a very public setting. And it was the first time that I realized that what I did every day, the little things, meant something to others, that I was actually driving an impact. And I finally had very influential leadership at that point in time. And I realized that, these past few years that I had been working, that work was a really big part of my identity. And I was okay with that. I embraced it and I wanted to continue to do better. When I think about the third thing that really kind of shaped in my career was the first time that I visited India with my current company back in 2018. We got an annual celebratory event called Mixo, You Mix with Others, and we bring over leadership from the US. And my CEO and founder gave me the best advice where he said, don't try to do any work this week. Just connect with people. Any meetings can wait. This is really about just building relationships with your global partners. And so when I got there, all of the teams blew me away because the week is spent decorating parts of the office in different cultural and social messages and creating skits and performances that we all get to participate and walk through. It's incredible. Then at the end of the week, all of the teams, the first year I went, we did it with like 1,000 people. Now the scale is 3,000 people. And at the end of the week, there are stage performances where people dance, they act, they create these amazing performances to just showcase their talent. And one of our core values is bring the Zing, and we definitely live up to it. It was a completely life changing experience. And I go back every single year, and it's the highlight of my year.
And I'm curious, what's your zing? Where are you in the mix?
As much as I say that I don't want to be on stage every year, I have learned how to dance a Bhangra dance. I have done things outside of my comfort zone, and I've enjoyed myself, even if I'm terrified to do it. I realize that me just having fun in the most authentic way within my peer group is a very rewarding experience, no matter how uncomfortable it is.
What I love about that story is it's pulling people together to create something that hasn't been created before and then deliver it to other people. I mean, it's nothing but out of a comfort zone, and everybody has fun and everybody's connected and supportive. It sounds fabulous.
It is. I'll show you some pictures when I go this year.
I love the zing idea. I just want to say that word. What is your favorite piece of leadership advice?
It's better to be humble than to be a hero. I think it's okay for leaders to admit that we don't have all the answers. It's more important that we stay curious and that we have the self awareness to hire people that are different than us, that complement what we believe are our weaknesses. For instance, I've noticed that through a personality profile assessment that we did of my team, have you done the DISC assessment before?
A million times.
What are your letters?
I am a DI, and they depend on the day which one is higher, but it's all about change, whether it's through people or just pushing it through. So, what are you?
I used to be a verified DI. And so when I assessed my team, I realized that I have surrounded myself and insulated myself with C's because I love logic and rational answers and data so that I can make quick decisions. And so I realized that in order to kind of complement in areas that I don't have the patience for, I'm okay with hiring people around me that are smarter than me in other areas, that think differently, can give me different perspectives. I mean, one of the best leaders that I had was an SC, which is completely opposite from a DI. But she, in my tornado of hyperactivity, was able to keep me grounded. She gave me really powerful feedback. She slowed me down, grounded me in reality, and kind of kept me focused on the right things. So I always believe as a leader, you need to balance yourself out with different styles instead of hiring a bunch of mini me's. That doesn't work.
My favorite VP was a CS, and she was over technology. And she just had a way of asking the right questions and listening quietly and waiting to speak until the end. And she did everything that I envied. I was like, oh, if I could just do that. And I do it now, but it took a lot of training and coaching for me to manage that. Now, sometimes people don't even know that I'm a D. They usually know I'm an I.
Do you think that you lived more in your I or your D in your professional career?
I'm a certified coach. I teach. I do all these things that are other focused. So I really work hard to match the style of the person I'm with. I try to manage my own style in a way that isn't alarming or offensive, because sometimes people in my style who love change can put other people off because other people don't love change. To answer your question, I think I lead with my eye a lot because I'm super extroverted and I love to know new people and just have conversations.
Yeah, I get it. One of our core values is call BS on your boss. It's probably our most notorious core value in our company, but I give my team permission to call BS on me if I am going too fast in a certain direction, because I will move fast because of my natural tendency to be impatient. And that just comes along with my personality type.
Do you have a workplace pet peeve?
Indecisiveness.
Tell me about it.
There is nothing worse than getting into a meeting where people are disorganized or unclear about the problem that they are trying to solve. We have a term internally that's called kill useless meetings, where you have to code every meeting as either a decision, a challenge, or an information update. And you have to be prepared in order to present to your stakeholders on the problem that you're trying to solve or the solution that you are suggesting. And I think in organizations that grow at scale and are constantly brainstorming but not moving forward, that's my pet peeve, when I cannot make progress due to indecisiveness of decisions.
When I hear you say that, I think about the disc and you're a D and you're sitting there with a C and an S who don't want to change anyway, and you're ready to move and the C needs the right answer. So they could be there all day.
Exactly. And so I understand that there needs to be
Yeah.
analysis, thoughts, and different solution options. But I think when we can't agree on a direction to move forward in a reasonable amount of time.
No, I get it. And as a D, I'm fine making a decision. And if it doesn't work, we'll make another one. That's not a fatal flaw
Yeah.
for me. I'm super happy with it. Let's do it. We'll fix it or we'll stop doing it. But let's just get going on it. Any questions for me before we wrap?
I don't think so. I mean, you've been pretty open. This has been a great discussion. That was a lot of fun. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for being such a great guest. It was a lovely chat. And thanks for being on the show.
We've all done something bad at work, but here's your chance to confess. From small wrongs like borrowing office supplies to simplify your back-to-school shopping or snacking on a coworker's lunch, to the major workplace sins, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll type. Here is today's conscious clearing confession.
I ran a medium-sized regional theater, and as the executive director, one of my jobs is to schmooze everybody. But the challenge was that it was usually like at the end of the day when I was getting crankier and crankier. And so I found a way to sort of like hide in a back room and read when the cocktail party part was going on. There was like this, it was bigger than a regular closet, but it was, it was like a storage room where I could go sit in there and sort of twiddle on the internet until I heard everybody leave. And then I'd go stand outside the theater when everybody was leaving so I could look like I'd been there schmoozing. And I would do some actual schmoozing, but I just knew I could get out of it. The really fun one is there were two people on a date who were during intermission trying to slip in and have a little alfalfa time. And so they must have been regulars and knew that closet was there. And so I heard the door opening and I put off the light and these two people came in, and it took them about 30 seconds to realize that I was in there. So I ruined their whole little tete a tete.
Now clear your conscience by submitting your workplace confession at cultureandstrategylab.com/podcast. Thanks for listening to the show. If you work in HR and have a story to share, please visit my website, cultureandstrategylab.com/podcast. Stories are what we remember and how we connect, so please share yours with me. Thanks. At Culture and Strategy Lab, we get to the heart of your business to help you breathe life into your values. And we help you create an HR strategy that aligns your culture to your business. Haiku for Stella. Stella leads with Zing. Curiosity's her thing. Decide, don't delay.